Hi everyone, my name is Tanya and I'm an interface designer. I design mostly IntelliJ IDEA's interfaces and I also work with DataSpell team. And here I'm going to talk about animation in UI, what the animation in UI actually is, where it comes from, and I'm going to give some tips and examples on how to work with animations. As a short introduction, let me share a couple of quite obvious things that actually really help me understand the principles and goals of animation in UI. We live in quite an animated world where everything around us moves continuously. And it's just more natural to see things really come and go than to see things instantly replace one another or appear out of nowhere. So that could be a reason why we feel more comfortable with animated interfaces. They seem more understandable and more familiar for us. And another thing worth mentioning is that years of evolution has taught us to notice any unusually moving object or suddenly appearing object. And that is why animations in UI can be successfully used to control users' attention. Let me share some highlights from the history of UI animations. And we will see that animations exist for almost as long as graphic interfaces do. This is Xerox Star Workstation. It was released in 1981 and it featured one of the first graphic user interfaces. Let's see what happens after you try to open a file here. So you see, no animation at all. You just have to wait after you click the file, and then after a while, the file will just appear. And this is very early macOS. We see quite a progress here, I'd say. If you're opening and closing a folder, you already see a simple animation. And I believe this animation helped the early users to understand the concept of opening and closing folders. This is MS-DOS by Microsoft, which, by the way, wasn't even considered a graphic interface. And here you suddenly see the pop-up really popping up when you open it. And we've moved a bit further. This is a Flash website from the late 90s. And it's very flashy, I'd say. Let's take a minute and watch the screencast. I can imagine that the audience was really amazed by such websites at the time. The navigation here is not a convenient one, but I guess the goal was just to impress the users, and this goal was achieved. And here we are at the present time. As for the modern interfaces, they are just filled with animations of different kinds. You see videos, nice interaction in mobile apps and websites, desktop animations, and some of them are quite useful and handy. Some are entertaining, and some may seem maybe annoying for someone. Let's go on and try to find out what's the difference between all these types of animations and why do we really need them. I'd like to continue with a common definition. Animation in the UI can be defined as an implementation of motion into the interface in order to improve the overall user experience. Animation in the UI serves two purposes. First, it adds informational value. It helps user focus on important thing and understand better what's going on. And second purpose, it brings fun, make user feel good or in a way satisfied. And thus it encourages users to use the product again. And in each case, depending on the goal, these two purposes may be mixed in different proportion. This proportion is totally fine. And of course, this one is fine as well. In each case, when we're thinking of implementing animation, we should define the proportion between fun and informational value. Let's go through some examples and see how the proportion is kept there. The blinking cursor is an example of an entirely informative animation. And it's not probably the first example that comes to mind, but it is a very helpful animation, interface animation. And now note the scale at the bottom of the slide that illustrates this information fun proportion. And let's move along the scale towards fun. Progress bars and loaders, they bring a lot of information value indeed. But at the same time, they might become fun and satisfying element of the UI. Like in this example, where the additional spinning of the round progress bar makes the process seem more active. I'd say it's easier to wait looking at this little spinner than if it were, I'd say, regular still standing progress bar. And we're moving forward towards fun. Likes in Instagram. When you like a picture, the heart icon becomes red and the number of likes grows. But it happens underneath the picture and it is out of your focus area because you're probably just looking at the picture and just double tapping it. So there is this popping heart that appears when you double tap the picture. And it not only looks live and nice, but it also makes it very clear that the action has happened and your like is counted. Okay, this now looks like total fun. But actually, those super colorful animations serve quite a functional purpose as well. After you've passed a level in So the Crash game, the animation keeps your attention, while the app is saving your progress in the background. And as for totally fun stuff, with no informational value, I couldn't find any example I liked. After working on this presentation, I couldn't stop but seeing informational value in all the animations I saw. Maybe you can bring some completely meaningless and fun animation to the question and answer session later today, and we will discuss them. Let's now move on to the physics of animations. The important thing when creating the animation is to keep it just right. Right timing, speed, amplitude, scale, and so on. And keep in mind that the more fun and decorative animation you're trying to implement, the more flawless it should be. Otherwise, you might just upset the user with too long or too laggy animation. So I'll share some simple rules to stick to. In this video, the speed of the moving object is constant at all times. This is a linear animation and it doesn't look real because in the real world, objects do not usually move like this. So see what happens when we add so-called in-is and is-out. The object now accelerates when it starts moving and slows down before it stops. And it gives the motion the more real-life feeling. Look at another animation. Here we are animating a pop-up that's appearing and disappearing. It fades in and then fades out. And fading in takes almost 2 seconds. And this makes the viewer think that the action really works slow, and it also prevents the user from seeing immediately the content of the pop-up after the click. And imagine how irritating it could be if it were something that user needs several times a day. Here, the fade-in takes only 0.13 seconds. This one looks better, doesn't it? The appearing animation is quick enough and doesn't give the impression of the lagging interface. And as for the animation of disappearing, it's okay to make it a bit slower. This will make the motion feel more smooth. And one more thing to avoid that will probably make the users hate you. Let's have a look. Here the animation prevents you from clicking the content of the pop-up. Don't do this. Do not add any peculiar and long animation that blocks the further interaction, especially for the actions that might be used very often. So one thing is to come up with a suitable animation, and another one is to go through till the implementation. And you need a developer for that. And the best way to turn a developer into your ally in animating the UI is to show them a preview of a final result. Because if you will just describe the animation with words, it won't probably be inspiring enough for the developer to set their current tasks aside and rush into animating the interface. And here's what you can do to back up your words with examples. In simple cases, just a couple of references from Google could be used as an example. Another option is to make Figma prototype with animation to give the impression of how the animation will fit into the flow. And in case you are planning a complex animation, it's better to recreate the whole animation in, for example, After Effects. And as a kind of a conclusion, I decided to follow my own advice, and I designed a couple of animations that I sometimes really miss an idea. Here is the current instant folding and unfolding of a section. Imagine I want to convince the developer to make it a bit more smooth. If I just describe it with words, I guess it won't be neither clear nor convincing. But I can try to animate this prototype in Figma. Here it is. With animation, this folding and unfolding looks more smooth and more friendly. What do you think? And also, while making this animated prototype, I can adjust how fast the fields should appear and come to the developer with the exact number. And in this case, it's 150 milliseconds to show the fields. And another animation. This is how deleting a file in Project 3 currently looks like. So this is a screencast. Let's have a look. Okay, the file disappears instantly and the focus jumps to the parent node. Okay, we see that something is probably deleted, but if you are not paying enough attention, you might start hesitating. Was it the right file that you've deleted? And here's how we can make the deleting file more satisfying and clear. Let's have a look. Before the file disappears, we can still see it for a moment, and then we see it go away. So we still have the second to make sure that we are deleting the right file. And also note that the focus just jumps to the previous file and it doesn't go anywhere far. This looks quite friendly for me. So that's it. I hope I managed to show you that animation in UI is not just a useless decorative thing that you can set aside till like forever, but it can be a handy instrument in controlling users' attention, bringing additional meaning to the interface, and just making the user feel happy. Thank you for watching, and see you at question and answer session. Bye-bye.